speak. If we want to do a Google Doc and Google Chat, I'm all into that too. We gotta probably clear it with chat and everything, or Mike can see if that works. But if you can always get a hold of me through email. And talk to your teachers too. I mean, they're supposed to be the ones directly contacting me, but I know that there are things you're gonna have questions about after we talk about this stuff. So, all right. So here's the end of what I did, and you'll see this when you get it in your emails once Barb sends them to you guys. Is all what to do now. How do we teach out of the box? What do we do? Let's say some of you in here and myself just got to work together last week, and there's this, let's say it's a handwriting worksheet you get from the kindergarten, and it has 4 or 5 different chunks in it. Too much for your kid. It was something that we'd cut out and blow up if we knew that's what we were going to get. And the kid starts going, no, not going to do this, going through the yellow zone into the orange zone. These guys are all laughing, because this might have been when I was at Irving last week. But anyway, we're sitting there, and you had such a fabulous suggestion when he said, let's get out the sand table and see if we can make some of those letters that they're wanting us to write on this page in the sand first. And it just went like gangbusters, didn't it? So it was a really cool way to teach out of the box. And your teachers, respectively, just gave me a couple little, I can read them. Oh, do you need this? I took it off in case I went to the restroom. I don't know how far it goes, but I thought, well, this will be great on tape. So that piece of that, how we implement positive behavior support, first of all, I should tell you what that is. It's assuming stuff is a skill deficit until you know differently. So this is really coming from somewhere. This is attention maintained. This is a sensory need this individual has. There are needs across the board that they have, and positive behavior support is something that just assumes that there is a skill deficit there, that they're not just a bad rotten egg, which I know no one in this room thinks. Sometimes I still get that, even from parents, you guys. I've got 6, and I don't know why these last 2, they're just throwing me for a loop, and I want to get those parents empowered to really think it has nothing to do with, rotten egg, that sort of thing, but they do have they have a skill deficit. I have yet to meet a child that has a significant skill deficit that doesn't have some behavior manifestations of that skill deficit. So if you have dysgraphia, if Laura, if she's got dysgraphia and she can only write down 2 words of what I'm saying right now, and it's backwards and it's crooked and it's that sort of thing, and it's meticulous and it's labored and it takes her twice as long as every kid in her classroom, she's going to have a manifestation of some behavior based on that, because it's too hard. And you can feel it all here, but you just can't get it out. I mean, I'm just throwing that one out there. But that is a very common one that kids need note-taking accommodations for. People don't even know they have this, but they do. It's called dysgraphia. It's a very real learning disability, and basically the breakdown is not in the head. It's between the head and the motor planning to get you to write out a whole sentence. Like, how do we implement PBS? I can say that to you, and you'll get how and do, and then you'll go, what? Now, can you imagine only getting how and do and having to check back again, having to check back again, having to check back again? How long before you'd have a behavior there, right? I mean, so to me, it's a common sense thing that there is something going on. We need to watch what it is, when it happens, and it's so in me, I can't even begin to tell you that looking at the function of that behavior is so important when we started with those big 5 Olympic rings. Is it attention? Is it medical? Is it sensory? Is it power? Is it escape? Those are your big 5, and they really are. They encompass a lot of your day in looking at kids and where their needs are. And okay, it's handwriting. Every time we get to handwriting, I get this, where they poke through. I had a kiddo do this the other day. They poke through, they go, whoops! It ripped! Here it goes! And the whole thing is ripped. And I mean, that is because they literally physically can't do that. And then we're saying, behavior referral, because you just ripped your page up right in front of me. And they're trying to escape that activity that's very hard for them. Typing, speech to text, talking out anything. I listen to my emails all the way here. Plugged my iPad in, and I can download them at my office. Plugged it in, came through my hands-free kit, and I'm listening to who I need to email back today when I leave here after my last client today. So, things like that you can do is just accommodations that make your life better, let alone our students with needs. So PBS, positive behavior support, relies on the fact that there's a skill deficit that you're teaching to, whatever that may be. Okay, so check this out. I want you guys to see this. I was so excited to show it to you because of all of my favorite time is time with just all my great teacher friends. And take a look. This kid got their paper, got a 0 on this, and got it.
He has all the letters.
And it's all alphabetical. Look at it. Okay, guys, so here's the deal. Tell me what's going on. Right. So it's not alphabetical this way like we automatically think of. He says apple. Well, A-E-L-P-P. You get it? He alphabetized them by word. It's not wrong. He's totally right. He read those directions to mean what? Write the following words in alphabetical order. So I don't care on the order. He didn't put these. In my brain, I go, oh man, what is going on? He's totally wrong. Look at pumpkin. It's in perfect alphabetical order. It's not spelled right at all, but it's in alphabetical order. Isn't that great? My friend sent me this, and it was actually a teacher had already given it to me and said, look at this. They are so wrong. I don't know what's wrong with them. I said, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's totally alphabetized. There is nothing wrong with what that kiddo did. He followed those directions to a T. No pun intended. To a T. All right. So, get it? I know. That's how his brain learns. And now imagine our conventional learning automatically goes, all of you resource teachers, you're like, nope. What's going on? What do I need? That's a skill deficit of him interpreting those instructions. Or it's a skill deficit on our part of us not teaching him what those directions are. Right? And what those mean. So developing positive behavior support. This is how you do it and what you do. You teach the students acceptable replacement behaviors. So instead of chewing, we are going to use this particular apparatus, and let's say a kid's biting me all the time. I have literally affixed things to my arm when I'm working with kids who are biting me. And I have affixed like a chew tube, whatever I'm going to use. Surgical tubing works well, whatever. Sometimes that's not big enough. I've used, just biting rings, things like that. I've affixed them to my arm, and so when that child does bite down, you know to push towards a bite. I hope everyone in here knows that. Don't ever pull away. You push towards a bite if you need out of it. But when that child bites down, they bite that toy, and I start separating my arm, or that, whatever it might be. I start separating my arm from that. Now this is now their biting apparatus, not my arm. With a nice little social story saying you may bite as much as you want during the day, but you don't bite people. You bite this, you bite that, you bite this. I don't care if you get 3 things that they bite, but none of them are other people's flesh. Little 3.5-year-old I'm consulting with right now has an 18-month-old sister. He has autism. He loves her fleshy little flabby arms and just like, oh, I got it all right now. Well, we can't affix things to her little arms, but we can give him that input in an appropriate way so he can bite something that feels like that. Sometimes your biters and your pinchers and your grabbers, and I don't mean that to sound badly, but sometimes they need the squeezing out of the little toy that the ears pop out and the eyes pop out, the old squeeze, that feels like flesh. You get some input there, but it's not my arm. So positive behavior support looks at these replacement behaviors continuously. Your more ADHD kiddo in the classroom who really can't focus, little chunk of Velcro under the desk sometimes is a miraculous thing. Instead of little fidgets and erasers and things going flying, when you feel wiggly, I want you to feel that right there. And they tell you which kind, you do this, don't put them together because then you go wah, 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 through the class. Don't do that. But either the rough or the smooth. And you feel that when you want to get wiggly. Pencil pockets. In 2nd grade, help more of my reg ed teachers that I work with. If your pencil is not in your hand, it is where? In the pocket. If it's not in your hand, it's in the pocket. So it takes all the argument out of it. You could do it in a resource room really easily. All your materials, your little kiddos, kids with severe emotional disturbances often surround themselves with stuff. Have you noticed this? This is my favorite rock from home. I brought it today, and it's going to sit right here. And then this is going to sit right here, and this is going to sit right here. And that is because often when you're in a pretty traumatic situation, you don't have access to things you can take, and things are taken from you all the time. So they find items to surround themselves with. I've had reg ed teachers do a box of stuff that's literally on their desk. Instead of them stealing things off their desk to go take, it's a box of things that can surround you, your comfort items. They're right here. Go ahead and line them up across your desk however you see fit, but we're not going to take other people's items. This is your box of stuff. That kind of thing, and it lives in your pocket if it's not on your desk in an appropriate spot, that kind of thing. So you just eliminate some of the behaviors before they even come by teaching them those replacements for the inappropriateness, okay? Manipulate what comes before and after the desired behavior. That's easy to say, hard to do. Using clear instructions without a ton of extra stuff, you guys. put your coat on, put your coat on, put your coat on, put your coat on, put your coat on. All of that's wrong, right? You say it once. If you're, let's say you've gone to the Humane Society and you've brought home a 4-week-old puppy, and you're teaching it, and this is some of the worst stuff I've seen. We watch it in BMOD all the time up at the college, but is it someone trying to teach a dog to roll over or do something? You want to give a clear directive and then give a reinforcement or a punisher. They either did it or didn't. So you say, yeah, good job, that's roll over, or no. Now with our kids and our students and our instructions, we can't give all this extra fluff a lot of times, especially for our populations of kiddos. They need to know exactly what to do and then get a clear directive as to whether they did that appropriately or not. And I'm by no means comparing those two worlds. I'm trying to break it down to the most basic elemental level, which is when you say it's time for lunch. You don't say, hey honey, let's go get your coat and let's take this, and then remember today lunch is outside recess and then we're going to go to lunch. No, you say it's time for lunch. You may begin getting ready by yourself, or I will help you get ready, and that's it. You don't spin with them. This little one, let's say they have high verbal and they look at you and go, but you forgot to tell Jessie it's time for lunch. Jessie needs to know it's time for lunch too. And now you're in an argument about telling Jessie it's time for lunch too, and the one that should go to lunch and should worry about herself is not doing that yet. And so now she's gotten you to spin to Jessie, and then she'll bring up something else, and you forgot to shut the door and shut the lights off, teacher, and then you're in this argument, and it's gone 3 ways. Parents at home, inevitably. They're talking to a child about it's time to go to bed. Well, last night you didn't tell me you loved me. This gets the moms. The moms are like, oh, and I'm like, don't bite. No, don't. Tell them you love them all you want once they're listening to what you're doing right then. But don't bite on that particular thing. Make it succinct, make it clear. Tell and re-ask is probably my best and favorite strategy, and I just did it this week with some of you. I just said, re-ask them where they're going and what they're doing. So we're on the playground, it's time to go in. Where are we going? So instead of the kid just running off from you, you stop them that extra second, tell and re-ask. It makes them cognitively rehearse it. The chances of them following that are greatly increased then once you've asked them. And your power and control kids love that because they get to tell you where they're going, even though you've told them. They forget that part off. And they go, oh yeah, it's time to go here, and then kind of own it almost. And what I'm really getting at there is, did they cognitively process that? Did they really get what I've asked them to do? And by re-asking them, I know, yep, that went in. Now they're still not listening, that's another problem, but it went in. They could auditorily tell me what time it is, or sign to me what time it is, or show me in picture form what time it is. All of those things work. You can use tell and re-ask. Doesn't have to be a verbal strategy. Where are we going again? Are we going to the doctor or to get popcorn? And you hold your hands out there because you don't have any of those icons with you. And they tell you by slapping the appropriate hand. You always have these with you. One of my other best speech, Lisa, you can throw something at me if you want, but my best speech things always is, I want what? Now I can do. I want, and sign what it is that I want. But I also always have these fingers with me, and when I do this, the kids know I need to give you, and you guys have seen this in the room, but I need to give her a word for each of these things. She's got a finger in the air and she's expecting something. It's an expectation. I'm trying to increase your utterance. And right, it starts out echoic, but it doesn't end up echoic. Because you look at a kid and you go, what time is it? And they'll say, it's time for da-da-da-da. And I think of kids right here in the school when I think of that, because they'll tell you, but you almost need to show them with the thumb, like, I expect a verbal response from you. And I can sign all of that. That's not the point. The point is I want you to talk back to me, especially if you're capable of using speech. If you're not, then show me in icon form. Yep, and we have an it's time for sentence strip. It's time for recess. And we plug that picture right in, and there's a sentence strip there, and you may say, Shauna, she's not even reading that sentence strip. I don't care. We're going through it. Put a little dot under the it's, under time for, so she knows to read along and go, it's time for recess. Let's go. And out the door you go, and that's your tell and re-ask with some of our kiddos who are not as verbal and can do that with you. And it works beautifully because they know those icons. And what are these other jumbly words ahead of it? But we're going to read these together and then exit. And you'll be shocked when they go up and they rip that recess picture down and put the bus up, and you're like, wow, it is going through. But if we try something for a day and it doesn't seem to work so well, 6 weeks, you guys, to make a big behavior change. I didn't even put that in here. 6 weeks. If you're going to change something for it to stick. 3 to see a difference, 6 for it to stick. that's now till past Christmas, right? So think about that timing, and that is one of our biggest misses is we start something, we might try it a week, maybe try it 4 or 5 times, and then we ditch it. And so to really ditch it, we need at least 3 weeks in, 6 weeks to decide if it's gonna stay. Religiously, doing it all the time, doing it with fidelity, okay? All right. Give them a chance to practice the appropriate replacements. I told you about the cursor. I told you about, biters, that sort of thing. That means you have to have that stuff with them. If it's stuff, if it's apparatus that I'm removing my arm from, I've got to have that squeezy toy. I got to have it all. So when I suggest in rooms where you come back in, all your things that you need are hanging right there. Because when you walk out that door, you can grab them all. And they all have to go back in the fanny pack, the zipper pack, whatever you're going to use collectively as a team to get it succinctly happening. But that is a great way to do it. All the materials live right here. They don't get passed around to the other kids. They're specific. If we need 5 of these squeezy toys, we get 5 of them. Does that make sense? These guys are leaving us. Okay, one of my best family solutions, just so you guys can hear this and kind of know where I'm coming from, because it could be classroom too, if your kids would be aware of this, is send them to Costco with 12, have them bring back 12 colored dry erase marker, depending on the number of kids in their family, 12 different colors. Every person has a color. Mom, dad, children have a color. We're really working on a positive performance for them, doing some more positive things at home, not so negative, not so redirective. And all of a sudden, these 4 family members all have a color, and every morning when they get up, they need to say something that they saw through breakfast that was nice about the other person. Not the bad stuff, not the sad faces, not the anything. But they walk down to, and Dad writes, Mom, I love your skirt today, you look very nice. And Mom writes, Jesse, I like the way you came down to eat breakfast the first time I asked you. And they all have a color that represents them, blue, green, red, yellow, whatever, and they all write positive things. Now, imagine in a classroom. I've done this in some of our more ED classrooms. Every kid has a color, and on that board goes what they've done right, not what they've done wrong. I love the way you, Sally, played with George today at recess. You guys were having a ball, and it exemplifies, it gives attention for the positive, not the negative. Okay? 3-to-1 ratio. Think about this. With significant others, with everything. 3 positives to every 1 verbal redirect. Think about some of our days, you guys, when we go home and go, oh my word, and we've given redirect after redirect after redirect after redirect without any positives in between. That's just a blanket statement. I see more families than I see any person in this room. I am so impressed with our support staff in Bozeman. I can't even tell you. You have no idea how much I talk about that all over the state. Well, here we do this, and here we do that, and so forth, just because I always see that here. I don't see someone fried to the point where they're being derogatory with the kids. I see outstanding people working with them, and I get the benefit of going to Missoula, Billings, Helena, Butte, to see all that, and I can tell you right now, it is different. It's different here. So, I always get excited about that. But it's highly recommended that you plan strategies you can do. Do not plan the moon and you don't have the moon. You don't have it with you. You don't have the materials. You can't do it. And I know that sounds silly to say, but this is like a little checkbox thing. You can go bing, bing, bing with each of your kids and think about, your time with them and how you could better structure that. Consistency in all staff, and I cannot hit this enough either. And if you have someone not doing it, do the colored markers for your staff in the room and really talk about, this is how I want you addressing this. Not, no you need tos. I'll know you're ready when, and I've got all this stuff later, but I'll know you're ready when your feet are on the line. I'll know you're ready when I say you need to my husband, and I get, you need to, bleep, bleep, bleep. It's a headstrong, confrontational kind of statement. And I'm not like, oh gosh, Shauna's psychobabbling all the I statements. No. It makes a difference when you say to a kid, I'll know you're ready when your pencil's in your hand, versus you need to put your pencil in your hand. It makes a huge difference with that kid. It's a matter of if I'm going to have a power struggle with a 7-year-old or not right now, right? Okay. Use language like, there we go. Right there. You can do it. I always back it up with that. No, I can't, shut up! That's what I get sometimes, and I say, I'll know you're ready when your words are quiet. I'll wait for you. Just like it's not even... I've literally said to kids before, and this is in a rare occasion, but nice breathing. I like some big oxygen right now, because I've got nothing else to build on. I don't know what to say right now, but That's happening. We're good to go. Anyway, so think about those. You can do it. I'll know you're ready when. Do it by yourself or with help. Sometimes in our younger grades, we can still offer that. In your older grades, they should be doing it on their own. They should be recognizing when they're starting to get upset. They should be signing for help. I need some help. Come on over. This is what it's time to do now, because we want to get less and less hands-on, right, as the kids grow. That's one of the things. Remember the kid I told you about that was an out-of-state consult as a 7th grader? He had Down and autism. One of the things he was doing is kind of falling to the floor and plopping all over. And it was because in his earlier years, what did they do when he did that? Picked him up, moved him, right? So it got a lot of attention, got a lot of stuff right away. And now he's 175 pounds sitting down. What 2 adults are going to come pick him up and move him on, and he knows it. So they're kind of stuck when he's stuck, because he's not going anywhere. And so now you have to redirect that and go, what's the deal? What's happening right now? But don't overdo that when they're young, or you end up not being able to fade it later. Does that make sense? Okay. Remember that it will often, if you've picked the right thing, the behavior model, if it really is attention maintained and you've decided to ignore it, it will go up before it goes down. It won't. Often it will. There is no doubt. I worked with a young man one time, and this was another area consult, and he had banged, you guys, 186 times a day is what I baselined him out of head banging at 6 years old. And I went to visit him, and when I went to visit him in his home, because it was a school consult, but I needed to see the home too, because this is a pretty intense case. When we did figure out that I'm talking 99.9% of his behavior was attention maintained. I'll tell you a little bit how it started. When he was 2 years old, about 2.5, he had a shunt put in his brain to remove fluid for 4 months. We had no idea what was going on. The shunt was put in, removed fluid, got the fluid off the brain. No other diagnosis other than that. Some kids can have water on the brain. It's not usually a great sign. But this was, draining the fluid off his brain. And in the 4 months he had that shunt in, he would ask his mom for something, and she'd say no. And guess what he'd do? The shunt was on the right temporal lobe. It drained fluid, and the doctor had her leave with this little 2.5-year-old, and when she left the office, he said, don't let him fall on his right temporal lobe. He could sever his spinal column and die. So that's what mom leaves with a 2.5-year-old who toddles, waddles, falls. If they hit this side of the head, she's thinking he's dead, because this is going to go right through his spinal column. Doctor told me not to let that happen. So this particular family was fabulous, and they worked really hard to try to get behavior gone. But what this kid learned in 4 months, I want a graham cracker, Mom. Mom said no. Guess what he did? Right temporal lobe. Right temporal lobe. Bit banged at the exact same time. Ah! Here's your graham cracker. Stop! Just don't. Right? I mean, we're talking life or death, not just messing around. So he learned that in 4 months that he could seek that negative attention. You with me? 4 months, the shunt was removed. I met him at 6. So for 2 more years, 3 more years, guess what remained? The head banging. On anything he wanted right then. Glass coffee tables, if he could find them, he ran to them. Sheets of glass in stores, in businesses. So we decided to, me with the doctor, sitting right there, pediatrician, I said, I am requiring you to be here with me. And I'm requiring, because can you imagine this consult, right? So I sit across from him, and I say, I'll know you're ready. When you're nice to your head, I'll be ready to go. We'll be playing. I literally said those words. So he learned real quickly that I didn't give any attention for the head banging. He head banged me, my legs, my arms, my whatever. And the second he was done, what did I do? Thanks. Nice. Good job. I love that. Super. He'd never had that in his whole life. He's like, what's this crazy lady doing? She's ignoring me. And then when she does, when I do something, and I stop this banging, she gives me, but you guys, I walked into his house, and I kid you not right now. He was the best stud finder in the world, because he'd go up and he'd feel it was hard, and he'd go off about 6 inches. There were 32 holes in their walls at his head level where he had banged his head through the wall. Now, can you imagine for a minute being a mom of a 6-year-old and a couple other kids running around, the dad making dinner, and you've got 32 holes in your wall from him head banging, okay? Now, we're trying to get him into kindergarten. You with me now? baseline, 186 times a day. Do you know when we started ignoring it, what it went to that next day with the doctor there? 385 times he banged his head, okay? 385 times. And after that 2-hour time period, it dropped off significantly and never did it again with me. But then who did I have to have sit with him? Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, everyone who'd given in before, because he did it with every single one of them trying to get out of a behavior. This is a skill deficit this kid has. He doesn't understand that he can get positive attention as much as negative, right? And so this is what the behavior will often, that's a huge example and a very exaggerated example of it's gonna get worse before it gets better. How do I do that? How do I tell you guys, listen, it's gonna go up a little bit before it goes back down. Stick with it. How long, Shauna? I mean, seriously, like how long do we have to do this? But if you've picked the right thing, there is a reaction to it. He does have an aversion to it. Like, no, I don't want to. I want to go back to the old way. Do you know where this kiddo would have been if we had gone back to the old way? I mean, we're talking heavy-duty medicines to keep him sedated so he doesn't hit him and hurt himself, okay? So those are the pieces. And then obviously there's a certain escalation that we can have here, and there's a whole difference at home. So remember, you're redeveloping and building a relationship. You're going to change your reinforcement for the good stuff, not the bad. You're going to look at all those pieces, and they all fall together. But look at it as a skill deficit. Go to sleep tonight and do your little spreadsheet in your head of the 4 kids you may work with in a day, the 14, the 22, the 29, the whatever it might be, and go, all right, I totally got it. That skill deficit piece is this. Yeah, he can't put one foot in front of the other. It's always Jim. My college placement, you guys, my teacher, I took a couple education classes too, and my teacher said to me, how did you like your college placement? And I said I hated it, and I ended up teaching for her son. She's a wonderful teacher here in town, and I said I hated it. I had a little girl who we mainstreamed in, she was in a walker, and we mainstreamed her into PE. Now tell me, just fundamentally, what might not be appropriate in that situation. No adaptive PE then. We were in PE, and we'd walk the perimeter of the gym while everyone else was running and playing dodgeball and badminton and bouncing balls and the volleyball and so forth. What's wrong with that scenario? Isolated and not engaged. Guess what she did the entire time? Banged her head and bit her hand, and that was the only time she did it, was in PE. And I'm like, duh. So my placement was as a para with her in this situation, and the teacher asked in class, how'd you like that? I said it was awful. I don't know what you're doing here, if you're trying to teach me what not to do, or what's going on, and I just, duh. You guys all know me, a little bit of diarrhea of the mouth. I thought it was terrible. Why would you mainstream someone who is physically disabled into a Reg Ed PE class and expect that they'd be fine with that? I had terrible feet since baby prints. I have arthritis really bad in both of them. You'll see me walking around with them like this. I couldn't do some of our PE things, and I remember what that felt like. And here she is in a walker. And isn't that a telling sign when that's the only time she has behavior? It's when you're in PE. Who was the brainstorm behind that? Seriously, what is going on here? That doesn't, what about library, right? Great time to mainstream. So just think about some of those just conceptual pieces. And I know sometimes you guys feel unempowered with like, but I don't have much to say about that. Yeah, talk to your teacher and say, listen up. I see this so much more incessantly when we're here because I think we're setting them up a little bit. And this is how. And those sorts of things. So you have this open dialogue between your instructors and so forth. So 95%, this is the other fun one. 95% of the behavior change comes from us, not the kiddo, and how we're dealing with it, how we're giving attention, how we're removing, how we're giving replacements, how we're doing all of that. 95%, hello. Parents don't like that when I tell them that, but it's true. Okay, so now, these are my 9 best things. I just love all of these, and I can explain all of them. Any of you in my behavior mod class someday, you'll learn about all of these, but they all have applicability in our setting with our individuals that we're working with. And so I have them all broken down into separate things and how to do them. So the rest of this is the how-to of how to do backward chaining. What to do with shaping. Do you see this? I'm not going to go through each of them on these bullets, but I'm going to go through each of them on this big thing so I can show you what they mean and the way I try to utilize them best. And then at the end, I've got some just some fun stuff for you to see, kind of like that academic skill builders. So backward chaining. I was in a group home. I was watching a 7-year-old 17-year-old trying to make his bed. I was 17 years old. He was exact same age as me. This kiddo had, this was in Sydney, he had his whole pile of his bedding on the floor. Fitted sheet, flat sheet, comforter cover, whole 9 yards. You with me? It's all in a wad on the floor. This child's task analysis that I was required to do was making a bed. All right. So I look at his motor skills, and he has very little of a pincer grasp. So his fine motor skills are really compromised, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Because he's got, this is hard for him to hold a fitted sheet, pull it over the end, pull it over the end. I mean, I don't think any of us love making a bed, right? So I said, no, I'm not doing this task analysis at 17. Please don't do this. I'll get in trouble for saying this on tape. I'm not doing this way. I can't do this way. I have to back it up. And my supervisor at the time's 30, 35, and looks at me and is like, what are you thinking, you young punk kid? I just graduated high school. And I said, no, I gotta back this up. And I was just adamant about it. So backward chaining is doing the last step of something first. So if you're backward chaining a puzzle, there's that last piece is out, and you have that child put that last piece in, and they see the whole thing completed. So with the bed, what would I do then if I was backward chaining it appropriately? Appropriately. The right way. That's right. You have them do, that's right, Corey. You have them do the last step first. And then you pull the comforter down a little and teach them this and then over. In the process of me watching my supervisor do this task analysis with him, he had banged him 26 times. And I'm like, no brainer. And I was not afraid of that at all. I was like, this is telling us something. He can't do this. Are you kidding me? Fitted sheet, flat sheet, comforter, throw pillows. My husband is like, I'm out. Whatever you're going to do with the bed, we're just not. It's just happening like this. I pulled the comforter up. That's good enough, honey. I mean, seriously, like that is not a fun place to be with someone when you know it's too hard. You've been given this diagnostic thing to run with them, and you're sitting there going, no, I got to back this up. Same kid at the sink brushing his teeth. Bang, 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 bang. So he had a precedence of, head banging about 60 times a day and was used to that sensory-wise, right? So you got to do other things. But he's at the sink, and we're teaching him to brush his teeth, and the water's running the whole time. Old days, we didn't